G'day and welcome back to another rant. Another rant so soon after the last one. Why is that? Well, I'll tell you why, because things have happened here in New Zealand that you need to know about. At Auckland International Airport, our largest international airport, another drone has upset air traffic. That makes the third one in a matter of 3 weeks. Another drone has been spotted near the airport causing a disruption to air traffic services. Well, I say a drone. Well, if I was a pilot I'd say a drone, but actually when the police were called they found it was a balloon. So, oh dear, but remember the first rule of being a commercial pilot, everything you see is a drone unless someone proves otherwise. So yeah, it was a balloon. Now, the very interesting thing is this balloon disrupted air traffic services at our busiest, largest international airport. But nobody has come out demanding tougher regulation for balloons. How odd is that? No one's come out demanding stiffer penalties for people who use balloons inappropriately. How strange is that? And it gets even stranger because I thought, well, what are the rules that control balloons in this country? What can and can't you do with a balloon? So I went to the CAO website and I called up the relevant regulation, which is part 101. And there's a section there dealing with balloons. They're called free balloons. And a free balloon means a pilotless aerostat without propulsion in free flight and having a gas capacity greater than 1.5 cubic meters, which is about 1.4 meters in diameter if you fill up a big balloon with something like whatever gas, right? So that's interesting. So that is a free balloon. But in the regulations, there's no mention, well, there's other categories. There's a medium free balloon and a heavy free balloon. And they're the only ones that are really regulated. A free balloon, if it's not heavy enough to categorize as a medium free balloon or a heavy free balloon, then it's pretty much unregulated. The only regulation is part 101.113, which talks about the strength of a trailing antenna. If you've got an antenna trailing out of your light or your free balloon, it must meet certain requirements. But if there's no antenna, then there's no regulation. It's unregulated. And that's kind of crazy because if you look at it, if you take a 1.5 cubic meter balloon and you fill it with hydrogen, it can lift almost 2 kilograms of weight. So if you assume the balloon's going to weigh, say, 400 grams for the balloon and the piece of string to tie it up with, you can hang a 1.6 kilogram block of steel from that balloon and it remains unregulated. You can release that balloon into the airspace with a 1.6 kilogram of steel hanging off the bottom of it, and it's unregulated. Apparently that's safe. Apparently if your airliner smacks into that 1.6 kilogram chunk of steel suspended by that balloon, it won't cause any problems at all, no damage, no harm at all. But under the New Zealand Civil Aviation regulations, if you stand in the middle of a large vacant field 2 kilometres from an airport and you have a 25 gram Cheerson CX-10 and you fly it under full control just a metre or two above the ground, that can merit a $1,500 fine. I'm at a bit of a loss here. I thought regulations were supposed to be risk-based, but it seems that 25 grams of plastic is a much greater risk when operated a metre or two above the ground than a 1.5 kilogram chunk of steel suspended from a 1.5 cubic metre balloon. Because you can let your big balloon with its chunk of steel go at the end of a runway if you want to. The only restriction will be the general rule that says you may not endanger an aircraft or aircraft system. But if you release it and it just happens to drift, because remember, this is uncontrolled. A free balloon is something without any form of control. So if you release it from your home, 10 kilometres from an airport, and it drifts onto an airport, well, it's not your fault, is it? You released it quite legally and legitimately, not knowing it would drift to an airport, and if it does, well, it's safe. Fear not, aircraft. 1.5 kilograms of steel going through the engines of your 737 or your A320 Airbus will cause no problems whatsoever, according to the regulator. This is how crazy and strange and obviously skewed the aircraft regulations are. It's unbelievable. But it gets worse here in New Zealand. Let me tell you about more from the media. I guess because the balloon story wasn't sensational enough, there was nothing, how can you vilify drones when it turns out to actually just been a balloon? The newspaper, the New Zealand Herald, one of our biggest daily newspapers, published an editorial in which they use all the usual hysteria things. A disaster waiting to happen in respect to drones being flown around airports. And Air New Zealand's Chief Operating Officer is quoted as saying, of drones, ban them from busy airspace and double the fine for operators who put so many people at risk. Well, this guy obviously doesn't have a clue what he's talking about because they're already banned from busy airspace. Does he not know the rules? You cannot fly a drone in controlled airspace without permission. So you're unlikely to get permission to fly your drone off the end of the international airport, so they are banned from busy airspace. This guy's showing his ignorance. And then double the fines for operators who put so many people at risk. Well, yeah, so currently the maximum fine is $1,500. He's saying $3,000 fine, that would fix it. No! If you look at it, people who engage in these things are doing it either out of ignorance or arrogance. If it's ignorance, they don't even know there's a fine involved, so what good would doubling the fine do? They don't even know they're doing wrong. If it's arrogance, then the size of the fine won't worry them at all. Look at a good example. In New Zealand, we don't have capital punishment for murder. We lock you up for 15 years or something. In the USA, in many states in the USA, there is capital punishment. You kill someone, then the state kills you. Now, that's probably the stiffest penalty you can think of yet. Yet US prisons in those states are filled with people on death row because they killed someone. Obviously, the penalty was no deterrent to them engaging in an unlawful act. So why would doubling a fine from $1,500 to $3,000 have any effect whatsoever on people who, by their very definition, show disregard for the law or ignorance of the law? Again, this guy from New Zealand, the chief operating officer, he's only, how can we take him seriously when he comes up with stuff like this? It is, you know, even an 8-year-old could see that the logic behind this, or the ignorance involved in this, is lunacy. But these are the people running. He's the chief operating officer of our largest airline. Honestly, it's no wonder these pilots can't tell a balloon from a drone, or a nothing from a drone, or whatever. It's like, this is the calibre of people we're dealing with at Air New Zealand. Fly Qantas, by all means, honestly don't. Anyway, so this was an editorial in one of our largest newspapers, and the interesting thing is, there's no right of reply, there's no comment section, there's no way that people who want to start questioning what's being said here can speak. There's no right of reply, there's no comment section, there's not even an address for sending letters to the editor to this publication. So they are just minds closed, ears closed. We're going to tell you what we want you to hear, and it's all about hysteria, a disaster waiting to happen. And meantime, what is the actual risk from these drones? Well, I'm going to point you at another very tragic incident. This time in Germany, 2 light aircraft collided over an airfield and 2 people died. This was just months after another Midair collision in the UK and another one, I forget where it was. There's a regular series of Midair collisions. Manned aircraft bang into each other and people die. But drones have never killed, you know, recreational multi-rotor drones have never caused a light aircraft to crash, if you excuse the rantings of our silly investigative journalist here who doesn't know his ass from his elbow. So there's no proof, evidence of a recreational drone ever causing a loss of life by crashing into a full-size aircraft. So why not double the fines for flying a manned aircraft recklessly, or whatever, you know, or ban these light aircraft from airfields because they just bang into other light aircraft. You know, if our airline pilot's going to say these drones are a disaster waiting to happen, well, here's disasters that happen every few months. Why aren't we dealing with those? Why aren't we applying the same rules and regulations, the same vigorous regulation to this very proven danger that has cost countless lives over the decades? No, because not trendy enough, I suppose. Okay, now back to other things. The local situation here with our mayor. There's been a raft of feedback on the rant I had the other day talking about our mayor who's unilaterally banned drones again in our parks. And a lot of people have said, why don't you run for mayor? To which I'd have to say, I would rather keep my standards high than to join in with people like the mayor. And speaking of standards, the mayor has been seen rubbing shoulders with the previous mayor, the mayor that was in office before her. They're very good friends. And it turns out that, unable to come up with facts and evidence to back their case or to dispute what I've been saying, the previous mayor's been running around telling people what a bad person I am. He's been engaged in character assassination, trying to basically tell people I'm bad, I can't be trusted, I'm a terrible person. Which I had a smile when I found that out. Someone came out and told me that he'd been at the local drinking club and telling everyone I was a terrible person. And I had a big smile on my face, because when people resort to character assassination, you know that their bucket of facts evidence is empty. They have nothing else but to throw mud. And mud doesn't hurt, you know, sticks and stones. So, like, whoa, I don't give a damn. It shows that they are completely out of tactics, out of strategies to deal with the issues I bring before them. And that's great. And so, yeah, point to me. Halfway through and I'm already winning. And what else have we got? Oh, yes. we're just looking here. Oh yeah, oh, great stuff. I mean, I've got to tell you, I got a call on the weekend from someone who said, hey, I've got something you might like. I thought, oh, okay. So I went round to his place and he gave me this. It's all full of stuff, it's full of papers in there. And this is even bigger. This is a huge folder full of really interesting and relevant documents about our airfield. Now this, basically the whole history of our airfield is in this folder. There are memos, there's emails, there's contracts, there's deeds, there's accounts, there's minutes of meetings covering the history of our airfield from way back in about 1971 through to the current day. There's newspaper clippings about public reactions and things. There's certain terms and conditions that the council is supposed to have kept to as part of the contract when the airfield was sold, and suffice to say they're not actually keeping to them. But it is just a wealth of information and a minefield, a disaster for the local council, because I have so much information here that yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens now. And I believe that this is probably the only copy of a lot of the stuff, because the council appears to have lost a lot of its copies for some strange unknown reason. But I've got all the copies right here, and I'm going to go through them with a fine-tooth comb. We'll see what we can find, because as I say, I deal in facts and evidence, not allegations and character assassination. I'm the guy that likes to make sure I've got all my ducks in a row before I go out and make a claim. So we'll see what happens. And finally, yes, it was a lovely day yesterday. I went out to the park, as I do. Took my, oh no, I didn't take my drone. See, here's some footage. Now you see, this isn't my drone, this isn't my backpack. I just happened to find it by this chair here, and I was just sitting there thinking, whoa, lovely autumn day. Look at the leaves. They're starting to turn. They haven't all turned yet. It was calm. The lake was dead calm, and I thought it would be a great day to fly my drone in the park. But of course, not allowed to. Can't do that. That would be terrible. That would be civil disobedience, and we haven't seen that since the 1960s and 70s. So I would never engage in something as retro as civil disobedience. So to finish off today's rant, here's a little bit of footage I took a long time ago, ages, and I forget how long ago. Well, it's probably 100 years ago I took this footage from my drone in the park on a day very much like yesterday. But of course it wasn't yesterday. So there you go, just to see you out, a little bit of music, a little bit of drone footage. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.